Okay, we're going to continue with Voyagers 2, the Treaty of the Anu, Melchizedek's, and the Anunnaki Resistance and Templar Axion Seal, 848,800 years ago. The agreement between the Brenu, negotiated between the Elohim and the Anunnaki 848,800 years ago, was called the Treaty of Anu, through which it was agreed that the Nephilim would not return to Earth, but were allowed to evolve in other systems, and that attempts would be made to create another Anunnaki-human hybrid, but only if the Anunnaki agreed to uphold the law of one. The new hybrid race would be entered into the new hybrid race would be entered into the human morphogenetic field through the six-race Melchizedek cloister and through the cloisters, or this cloister, the remaining Atlantean Egyptian Nephilim Aton A souls from the previous host matrix transplants could be reintegrated into the sphere of Amenti. The new hybrid Melchizedek Anunnaki race would be called the Anu, and would be entered into Earth through combining the fifth race Melchizedek cloister with the fourth race Atlantean Egyptian subrace during the third seeding. The Melchizedek cloister would serve as a host matrix family for Anu, and later the remaining portions of the Egyptian Nephilim morphogenetic field, which had been placed with the Aton A host matrix family, would be integrated into the Melchizedek line. The treaty was created in order to end the war through agreements that were fair to everyone, allowing the Anunnaki to advance the spiritual aspects of their evolution through working with the law of one, while allowing human evolution to remain on course. The Treaty of Anu created a division within the ranks of the Anunnaki races, and between the Anunnaki and their sister race, the Syrian Blues, accepted the authority of the Harmonic Universe II Syrian Council. Not all of the Anunnaki accepted the authority. Not all of the Anunnaki agreed to this treaty, and those who continued to pose a threat to the Earth security were banned from Earth visitation and became known as the Anunnaki Resistance. The few remaining Draco's hybrids that had previously found exile on Sirius A with the Anunnaki joined in the Anunnaki Resistance and motivated their Dracon forefathers to join forces with the Anunnaki Resistance with the intent of destroying the sphere of Amenti. In an attempt to promote intergalactic peace and safety for those to evolve on Earth, the Syrian Council of Harmonic Universe II petitioned the Ra Confederacy and Axios family entities from the Metagalactic Core to intervene on behalf of the Treaty of Anu. These entity families agreed, and the first administration of the Templar Axion Seal, which is the 666 genetic configuration, was applied to the morphogenetic field of the Anunnaki Resistance. This seal was also applied to the morphogenetic field of the Draco's hybrids. Neither strain could now interbreed with other species who did not carry the imprint of their genetic code. For those of the Anunnaki Resistance, the children of Anu offered the only hope of their hybridization or reintegration on Earth, so even before they were convinced in flesh, the children of Anu became a target for infiltration by the Anunnaki Resistance. With the Treaty of Anu, the 1,000 Years' War was brought to a close, and the division between those who served the law of one and those who did not become more clearly defined. Great protection was needed for the races of the third seeding, for the Dracos, Dracon, and the Anunnaki Resistance desired to see their destruction. The 1,000 Years' War between the Elohim and the Anunnaki brought an end to the second seeding of the human lineage on Earth. Okay, so it looks like that was the end of chapter 2. And I guess let's just keep reading on into chapter 3, the third seeding, the Ark of the Covenant. Creation of the Ark of the Covenant, removing the sphere of Amente, the flood, the Andromeda Galaxy, the Syrian-Arcturian Coalition for Interplanetary Defense, and the Interdimensional Association of Free Worlds, the Urtites, or Urtides, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, the Urtides, I think might be, the Sirius Egyptian and priesthood of Ur, and this is 849,000 through 800,000 years ago. The sphere of Amente had been returned to the Earth's core by the Elohim and the Syrian Council, Ceres and Palladorians of Harmonic Universe 2 about 900,000 years ago, accelerating assembly of the DNA strands and releasing the seal of Pallador for some strains of the races from the second seeding. Some groups were able to evolve enough to release the seal of Amente from their DNA, which allowed them to ascend through the halls of Mente back to Terra. All was going according to plan until the outbreak of the Thousand Years' War, 850,000 years ago. Following the outbreak and escalation of the war, and the Anunnaki's intention of destroying the sphere of Mente in order to use humans as a worker race, it was no longer safe to keep the sphere of Amente with the Earth's core, as Anunnaki operatives could easily discover access to its Dimension 2 resting place. So here we have another source also reaffirming that the Anunnaki wanted to use humans as a worker force. Like I've been saying, that's why you guys all have to work those 9-to-5 jobs, overworked, underpaid, enslaved by the financial system. You got a driver's license number, a social security number, federal tax ID number, a passport number, etc., and that's how your slave masters track and monitor you as their worker force. So again, just another source. A lot of people didn't believe me when I said that. All right, let's keep reading. Under the command of the Brenu and the Ra Confederacy, the Syrian Council of Harmonic Universe 2 assisted in the series of Harmonic Universe 2 and the Elohim in once again removing the sphere of Amente from Earth. The sphere of Amente was removed from Earth and placed within a secure location about 849,000 years ago. The sphere was placed within a planetary core in the Andromeda Galaxy, under high security and held there in exclusion until the close of the Thousand Years' War, which is 848,800 years ago. With the implementation of the Treaty of El Anu and the threat of the Anunnaki resistance, a multidimensional intergalactic effort was made to ensure protection for the sphere of Amente. The Syrian Council of Harmonic Universe 2 petitioned assistance from numerous star systems in Harmonic Universe 1 and Harmonic Universe 2 to provide security. Races from the Arcturus and from the Pleiadian systems offered assistance, as many humans had, during the course of their troubled evolution, found exile within the Pleiadian and Arcturian cultures. Cooperation was given from both Harmonic Universe 1 and Harmonic Universe 2 to members of these races. The Syrian Council of Harmonic Universe 2 formed an organization with pro-human members of the Harmonic Universe 1 Syrians and several cultures from Arcturians called the Syrian-Arcturian Coalition for Interplanetary Defense, through which the hidden sphere of Amente, Earth and its allies would be protected if need arose. This organization was later invited to join a much larger interdimensional guardian group known as the Interdimensional Association of Free Worlds, whose membership extended well into the highest harmonic universes. Though many races in the Andromeda Galaxy were already members of this collective, the Association of Planets in Andromeda would not agree to military involvement, as they were not entirely supportive of the conditions of the Treaty of El Anu. They did, however, allow the sphere of Amente to remain hidden within the secret location in their system. Following the removal of the sphere of Amente 849,000 years ago, The Earth once again endured a series of climatic and geographical changes as Earth's energetic grid rebalanced following the removal of the sphere. Again, flood waters rose, covering portions of Earth's surface in historical record. This time period became interwoven with the early flooding associated with the electric wars, and a later time period of flooding, all consolidated into the story of your biblical flood. Okay, so this is saying that there's been a whole bunch of different floods spanning over like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years, but they all kind of get combined into the biblical mythology. The Guardian organizations knew that the third seeding of the human lineage would have to be orchestrated once the planetary environment rebalanced. But the third seeding could not take place directly through Earth's core, as the sphere of Amente morphogenetic field was now in the Andromeda Galaxy. The third eye of Horus portal, through which the second seeding took place, would no longer be useful, as its connection to the sphere of Amente had been severed. So a new portal bridge needed to be created between the Andromeda Galaxy and Earth in order for the third seeding to take place. The third eye of Horus portal bridge remained opened as a passage between Earth and Sirius B, frequently used by the Kentarians of Sirius B for visiting during the third seeding, but it no longer connected to the sphere of Amente and so could not be used for ascension to Terra. The Ark of the Covenant 840,000 years ago. A portal bridge between the sphere of Amente and the Andromeda Galaxy and the Earth's Dimension 2 core was constructed by the Guardian organizations about 840,000 years ago. This intergalactic bridge was called the Ark of the Covenant of Pallador, but later became known as the Ark of the Covenant. Through the Ark of the Covenant, the race souls of the sphere of Amente could once again be reseeded on Earth. Souls from the sphere of Amente could pass through the Ark bridge as pure consciousness, merge with the Earth's morphogenetic field in Dimension 2, then birth into physical manifestation. A fifth dimensional security seal was placed upon the Ark of the Covenant, which meant that this portal operated as a one-way door, so souls of the races could descend through the passage but could not return to Amente morphogenic field for ascension unless they had fifth dimensional coding in their gene structure. This genetic ticket to freedom became known as the Shield of the Ark, and the incarnates who bore the fifth dimensional shield within their genetic code could pass through the seal of the Ark of the Covenant and return through Amente to Terra. As races 3, 4, and 5 did not have the fifth DNA strand within their genetic imprint, they could not return through the Ark even as consciousness unless the seal of Pallador and Amente were released. Release of the seal of Amente would allow these races to merge with the antiparticles and pick up the fifth strand, but first, the fourth dimensional seal of Pallador had to be released. Evolution would take time for races 3 to 5 of the third seeding. Those who could not re-enter the Amente morphogenetic field would evolve within the fourth dimensional astral planes between incarnations, along with those identity fragments created through the seal of Pallador until the time when the Ark of the Covenant was opened and the fifth dimensional seal of the Ark was released. The sixth race, Muvarians and their Melchizedek cloister, then held the key to ascension, as the fifth DNA strand was included in their genetic imprint. The six races would be born with the shield of the Ark in their genetic code, and as the Anunnaki human hybrids Anu were to be seeded through the Melchizedek cloister, the Anu would also bear the shield of the Ark. Those bearing the shield of the Ark would become the Earth Guardians of the Ark of the Covenant and the Sphere of Amente. The Ark of the Covenant was designed in such a way that the Sphere of Amente could eventually be re-entered into the Earth core through the portal bridge of the Ark. In this way, the Ark became self-regulating. The return of the Sphere of Amente would depend on conditions in Earth's planetary grid, and the Guardians would not have to re-enter the sphere. The fifth dimensional seal of the Ark of the Covenant was designed to be released once a certain percentage of the Earth's population had assembled the fifth DNA strand, which meant that a certain number of the Melchizedek cloister would have to be born upon the planet. If 8% of the living population could assemble the fifth DNA strand, the Earth's grid vibration would rise, affecting the vibrational speed of the energy particles within Dimension 2 Earth core. As the Dimension 2 particles began to vibrate faster, a blue-white spark of fifth-dimensional high-frequency energy would be sent up from the Earth's core through the portal bridge of the Ark of the Covenant. This spark would penetrate the fifth-dimensional seal and the Ark on the Ark and enter the blue flame within the sphere of Amente. The blue flame would then send a corresponding spark of fifth-dimensional frequency back into the Earth's core, which would open the Earth's morphogenetic field to accept the sphere of Amente while raising the Earth's grid raising the Earth's grid's speed high enough to hold the Dimension 5 blue flame morphogenetic field on Terra. Upon the second spark, the sphere of Amente will begin to descend through the Ark of the Covenant, while the blue flame remained within the Andromeda planet. Originally, the descent of the sphere of Amente was to take about 2,000 years, its energies becoming progressively more available to the people of Earth, stimulating the assembly of the fifth DNA strand and the raising of consciousness. During its 2,000-year descent, the Earth's grid would rise in increments, allowing the Earth's energy system to adjust to the increasing infusion of high-frequency energy. Once the sphere was repositioned within the Earth's core, there would be a period of several years for the Earth grid to assimilate the new frequency, and the race memory would progressively infuse the Earth grid. As the race memory from the Amente morphogenetic field filtered through the Earth grid, this energy would stimulate the DNA of everyone on the planet, and the lost memory would re-enter the cellular memory of individuals as their DNA strands began to assemble through the new fifth-dimensional frequency now available to them through the Earth's core. Over the course of those several years, the races would evolve rapidly, and a mass awakening to the lost memory of multidimensional reality would occur within large numbers of the population. Well, that seems to be happening right now, especially with the internet and TikTok and YouTube and Rumble and all the spiritual content creators out there. This is happening right now. And with all the people doing ayahuasca and DMT and all the downloads people are getting. And I mean, I see people talking about this stuff all the time now on the internet. Through these energetic processes, the Earth and her people would be prepared to receive the blue flame of Amente. The blue flame would be given a rapid descent to Earth core following the opening of the Ark of the Covenant. It would take approximately 12 years for the blue flame to descend to Earth through the Ark of the Covenant. Return of the blue flame was a very precise process and had to be orchestrated in synchronization with the natural time cycles of which Earth was a part, entering Earth during the period of natural dimensional blending that occurs at various times within Earth's time cycle. Timing was very important in the return of the blue flame, as certain conditions had to be planned in advance of its return. During the dimensional blend, the blue flame could not directly enter the sphere of Amente, as the sphere would be connected to the Earth's morphogenetic field at Dimension 2. The inner Earth portals to Dimension 2 during the dimensional blending period, and if the fifth dimensional frequencies of the blue flame merged directly with the second dimensional frequencies of the Earth's core, Earth's planetary grid would explode. The fifth dimensional frequencies had to be dispersed through the Earth grid via the energetic fields of certain people alive on the planet. The bioenergetic fields of those individuals would serve as frequency modulators for the fifth dimensional energy. These individuals would hold the Dimension 5 frequency of the blue flame within their own energy system through the height of the dimensional blending. Then, when the natural cycle of dimensional blend reached its close, the blue flame would be returned to the sphere of Amente at Earth's core, and the halls of Amente, the ascension portals to Terra, would open to those on the planet who had assembled the fifth DNA strand and could pass through the blue flame. For people who had not yet assembled the fifth strand, much information on how to go about accelerating this process would be made available, as the memory banks of the race would be restored. As long as the blue flame remained within the sphere of Amente at Earth's core, the ascension portals to Terra would remain open to the races, allowing them to evolve rapidly and complete their tour of incarnational duty on Earth. The souls trapped within the Dimension 4 astral and Dimension 2 elemental kingdoms could also complete their evolution and descend. You know who talks about this a lot and actually has a map of all this that is described right here is Gerald Clark in his book, the Seventh Planet, Mercury Rising. Because he talks about this, about how there's a certain time cycle where humans can ascend and get out of the incarnation loops, and it's about raising your frequency. And he actually, like, as an engineer, he took the description of all the nine dimensions of the universe described in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, and he drew it out into a graphic, and included this whole time cycle thing and how to ascend and the different dimensions and all this. So it's pretty interesting if you ever read Gerald Clark's book, The Seventh Planet, Mercury Rising. The individuals who would be responsible for holding the fifth dimensional frequency within their bioenergetic field during the time of transition are called keepers of the flame, and they would, over a period of years, dispense the fifth dimensional frequencies through large numbers of the population, assisting the populace to assemble the fifth DNA strand, expand their consciousness, and transmute their bodies so portions of the population could catch the morphogenetic wave. Discussed later, in parentheses it says, and pass through the halls of Amente on the wave while the dimensional blend was still in effect. Once the cycle of dimensional blending was through, the flame would be placed back into the sphere, and the remaining populations would continue to evolve on Earth until the next morphogenetic wave. The people who were able to catch the first wave would find themselves teleported into the future, where they would appear on the Terran landmass that was once called the continent of Mu. This Terran location represents the primary reality of Earth as it exists about 2,500 years in the future, the version of Earth whose grid has completed its merger with Terra. This path of accelerated evolution constitutes leaping past 2,500 years of evolution within Earth's present time continuum and represents literal biological time travel into the future. With the opening of, or sparking, of the Ark of the Covenant, this path of accelerated evolution would become available to some humans on Earth. The Keepers of the Flame would be responsible for assisting people who were ready to take this morphogenetic wave voyage in preparing their bodies and consciousness for this transition. The Keepers of the Flame would receive their infusion of Dimension 5 frequency from one primary individual who had the genetic code that would allow the flame to be fully embodied as it passed through the Ark of the Covenant. The person is called the Flame Bearer or the Staff Holder. The Flame Bearer would have to activate the 12-strand DNA package within the body before being able to embody the flame. This person would incarnate with a support team of 6 fully activated 12-strand avatars, and in parentheses it says souls from the fourth harmonic universe, who would raise the planetary frequency high enough to allow for the Flame Bearer to fully activate the codes. Due to the bioenergetic mechanics of the human body, the Flame Bearer would have to be a female in gender, the avatars all male, in order to keep the energetic balances of the planetary grid intact. During the opening of the Ark of the Covenant, there would also be a family of individuals appointed to embody the rod, the orange-gold flame morphogenetic field of Earth. During the time of transition, the rod holder would be male. Members of these specialized incarnational groups would have to incarnate in the proper sequence within the right time periods in conjunction with the Earth's time cycles and within the appropriate genetic lineages that would provide them with the needed genetic imprint. The process of opening the Ark of the Covenant and allowing the sphere of Amenti to return to Earth requires a tremendous amount of multidimensional organization. The fulfillment of the promise of the Ark of the Covenant would take over 800,000 years to fulfill, and meanwhile the races of the third seeding would begin their evolutionary journey towards that destination. The seeding through the Ark of the Covenant, the Hebrew Seres Egyptians, Urites, and the priesthood of Ur, races 3 through 6, and the Anu Melchizedeks, 800,000 through 55,000 years ago, is the next part. For a period of time following the creation of the Ark of the Covenant 840,000 years ago, the Earth went through a period of rebalancing its energetic grid, and during this time the races did not evolve on the planet's surface. Some descendants of the second seeding prospered within the inner Earth communities, and a few scattered groups had managed to survive within the underground tunnels created by those of the second seeding. Most of the human population had fled, finding exile within other planetary systems. The Nephilim had been evacuated to Sirius A, joining remnants of the Draco's race, who had found exile with those who became the Anunnaki, or the Anunnaki resistance. About 800,000 years ago, several groups of the now extraterrestrial humans returned to Earth to begin preparation for the third seeding, which could be orchestrated through the Ark of the Covenant portal bridge. Two primary groups of returning humans, descendants of the Sirius Egyptians and the Hebrew Melchizedek hybrid humans, the Elohim. Oh wait, sorry, I lost my spot. Hang on. Okay, so two primary groups of the returning humans, descendants of the Sirius Egyptian and Hebrew, which are the Melchizedek Hybiru hybrids, from the second seeding, were commissioned to the Peladorians of Harmonic Universe 2, the Elohim, and the Ra Confederacy to orchestrate the third seeding. Upon returning to Earth, these groups discovered that there was a small group of survivors remaining from the second seeding, descendants of the third race, Lemanians, and their Ur-Antrian cloister. The Sirius Egyptians, who had been exiled on Sirius B and in the Pleiadian star system, and thus now carried a strong extraterrestrial imprint with their genetic codes, interbred with the Lemanians and the Ur-Antrians, forming a new guardian race through incarnating souls via the Melchizedek cloister morphogenetic field via the Ark of the Covenant. The new race was called the Urtites. They appeared on Earth about 800,000 years ago, working with races from the inner planet, of the inner Earth and the Harmonic Universe 2 Peladorians. The Urtites established the priesthood of Ur on Earth. The Urtites lived primarily underground and within the inner Earth civilization, serving as guardians of the Ark of the Covenant when conditions on Earth were conducive to supporting mass surface life. The Urtites were given authority by Harmonic Universe 2 Syrian Council given authority by the Harmonic Universe 2 Syrian Council, Ra Confederacy, and Priest of Ur on Terra, to begin the third seeding of the human lineage. Many subraces and families emerged through the Urtite genetic strain, as each of the 5 cloistered races birthed their race line through the Urtite host race. The races were located throughout various regions of the globe, each developing surface cultures from about 750,000 to 75,000 years ago. The Urtite lineage developed divergent cultures extending from what is now known as Africa through regions of East Asia, North and South America, Central Europe, Egypt, and into what is now called Iran. Through development of these diversified cultures, the host race Urtites created a new cradle of civilization through which the root races and their cloisters could be reseeded on Earth. The third seeding of races 3, 4, and 5 began again via the Ark of the Covenant under the direction and through the lineage of the Urtites. The third race, Ur-Antrian cloister, began birthing around 75,000 years ago, their Lemanian root race 73,000 years ago. The Lemanians of the third seeding were called Lumerians, and they were seated on a landmass that existed in the area now occupied by parts of the Pacific Ocean and also within the region of the Andes Mountains. The Brianoa cloister of the fourth race entered about 72,000 years ago in lands that existed in the area now occupied by parts of the Atlantic Ocean and into the territories that became known as Egypt, followed by their root race Atlanians 70,000 years ago. The Atlanians of the third seeding became the Atlanteans. The fifth race, Hybiru cloister, entered through the host matrix of the sixth race Melchizedek cloister into various positions throughout the globe about 68,000 years ago, followed by their root race Aryans 65,000 years ago. The root race Aryans of the third seeding were called the Aryans. Concentrations of the race were seeded into the region near what is now called the Black Sea and the area of what became the Carpathian Mountains. The Anu Melchizedeks were seeded into the Atlantean root race Egyptian subrace through the Melchizedek cloister host matrix morphogenetic field about 68,000 years ago. The Anu prospered in Atlantis, many migrating to various parts of the globe and interbreeding with other races. The primary concentration of the Anu remained in Atlantis, where open lines of commerce with their Syrian Anunnaki forefathers became a standard way of life. The Anunnaki who had joined the Syrian Council through the Treaty of El Anu and the Syrian Kantarians and the Syrian Blue races of Sirius B became a primary motivating force within Atlantean culture, and the Pleiadian race of Harmonic Universe 1 assisted in the development of Ur-Antrian and Lumerian culture. These cultures thrived under the influence of the advanced stellar races. The Anu Melchizedeks organized their cultures around the spiritual scientific teachings of the Law of One. Members of the Hyberu cloister and the hybrid Hebrew peoples migrated from their regions of both Atlantis and Lemuria, each bringing with them the teachings of the Law of One, characteristics of the Melchizedek host matrix. As civilizations on Earth prospered, the Syrian Council allowed the Atlantean and Lemurian cultures to receive gifts from the advanced stellar races, which rapidly developed their technological aspects of society to heights far exceeding present earthly cultures. The Syrian Blue races of Sirius B brought large crystalline power generators to Earth as a gift to the Atlantean and Lemurian cultures. They taught the Ur-Antrians, Lemurians, Anu, and Atlanteans how to draw energy directly from the Dimension 2 Earth core and store this energy within the crystal generators. Permission was granted by the Elohim and Ra Confederacy to allow power to be drawn from the blue flame of Amente through the passageway of the Ark of the Covenant. The power of the blue flame allowed Atlantean civilizations to access multidimensional frequency through which the morphogenetic fields of Earth matter particles could be directly affected. There's a lot of other Anunnaki translations and stuff like that talk about how they had these really advanced crystal technologies and energy generators and things like that were powering all of their infrastructure, and they would fight over the technology sometimes. And a lot of stuff about how inside the pyramids there's massive crystal generators and things, but they've all been gutted out. All that technology's been taken out of it. Earth's gravitational pull could be neutralized. Objects could be manifested and demanifested. Objects could be teleported to desired locations. Bioenergetic healing became a way of life, and genetic evolution was accelerated. Using the power of extraterrestrial technology, the Atlantean Lemurian cultures thrived. The Anu and Hebrew peoples of the Melchizedek cloister host matrix became the primary Earth guardians of the Ark of the Covenant. The original portal passage to the Ark of the Covenant was located within the landmass of the Atlantean continent, and through this interstellar passageway, power was fed through the Earth's grid to the Lemurian continent and various other developing civilizations. Earth civilizations thrived following the Law of One until about 55,000 years ago, when members of the Anunnaki resistance began to infiltrate the Atlantean culture, creating genetic and social digression that nearly brought Atlantis to an end. Okay, then the next part is called Lemuria Destroyed. Anunnaki Resistance, Anu and the Dracos, Destruction of the Lemurian Moriphi, and relocating of the Ark of the Covenant 55,000 years ago. As Atlantean and Lemurian cultures thrived, other stellar cultures watched and waited. Members of the Anunnaki Resistance and their Dracon and Dracos allies had long planned to overtake Earth territories, waiting until the growing civilizations had reached a height of maturity. Motivated by their own desires to utilize Earth as an evolutionary option, the Anunnaki Resistance quietly infiltrated the Atlantean cultures around 55,000 years ago, covertly moving within the ranks of Anunnaki of the Syrian Council. Once reestablished on Earth, the Anunnaki Resistance interbred with the Anu and over a period of generations distorted the Anu genetic lines with the Templar seal, which had been placed on the Anunnaki resistance following their refusal to accept the Treaty of El Anu. The teachings of the Law of One were slowly distorted as the creed of the Templar Solar Initiates of Terra, which the Harmonic Universe 2 Anunnaki Rebellion had helped devise. And this has came to replace the sacred teachings, creating division and social unrest within Atlantean civilization. The Anunnaki Anu began to spread their influence into other cultures, gaining covert control over Egyptian lands and several other smaller cultural centers. About 52,000 years ago, the Templar Anu allowed the resistant allies, the Dracos, to secretly return to Earth, promising them an earthly home if they would assist in the infiltration of the Earth cultures. The Dracos infiltrated the Lemurian continent of Moravhi, creating an extensive network of underground layers within the tunnel systems that ran between Lemuria and Atlantis. Systematically and aggressive Dracos began terrorizing the Lemurian culture, extending the reign of terror into Atlantis and various other places. Meetings were held by representatives of all the races through which a plan was devised to end the Dracos' problem. The humans hoped to use generator crystals to create small pinpoint explosions within the underground caverns in order to seal the Dracos within their lairs until the Syrian Council could come and evacuate the Dracos. But the plan backfired as the Earth grid became energetically overloaded by energy from the generator crystals, and a massive explosion occurred within the lands beneath Muraivhi, I think is how you pronounce that. The explosion destroyed the landmass of Lemurian civilization, and remnants of the Lemurians integrated into Atlantean territories. The explosion caused massive volcanic activity, earthquakes, and floods, and though the Atlantean continent did not suffer massive destruction, it took generations for them to rebuild and for the Earth to rebalance her grid. A small period of ice followed these events, during which most of the races retreated underground, some permanently entering the inner Earth. After the surface environment stabilized, most of the remaining races returned to the surface to rebuild. Atlantis again became a cultural center, but never again reached its previous height of development. Most of the Dracos were evacuated from Earth by their Anunnaki resistance accomplices, and the Templar Anu continued to hold their ground within Atlantean and Egyptian cultures. Following the cataclysm of 52,000 years ago, the Anunnaki of the Syrian Council and several other stellar neighbors returned to Earth, assisting the humans to rebuild. During the explosions beneath the ground, the portal passage to the Ark of the Covenant had been damaged, and the energetic grid beneath the Atlantean continent was unstable. The Elohim, Rock Confederacy, and other guardian groups of the Harmonic Universe 2 reconstructed the Ark of the Covenant, moving the portal that connected it to Earth out of Atlantis and into the regions of Egypt, where the Earth grid structure was more stable. The Sirius Egyptian races would now share guardianship and control of the Ark of the Covenant with the Anu, Melchizedeks, and Hebrew peoples who migrated there following the explosions. The cultural hub of Earth was relocated from Atlantis to Egypt about 51,750 years ago, and Egypt began to thrive. Giza to Atlantis, Anunnaki of the Syrian Council and Earth Protection, the first building of the Great Pyramid of Giza and the Sphinx, Ankh's outpost on Mars, first birth wave of Melchizedek cloister, and re-establishment of the Law of One, 48,500 through 35,000 years ago. Following the relocation of the Ark of the Covenant 51,750 years ago, Egyptian culture prospered, and Egypt became a center for the Anu, Melchizedek, Hebrew, and Sirius Egyptian guardians of the Ark of the Covenant. Atlantean culture also prospered as the generator crystals were once again restored to operation after being put out of service during the Lemurian cataclysm 52,000 years ago. The generator crystals were once again charged with multidimensional frequency using the Ark of the Covenant in Egypt. Through this period of rebuilding, the expansion, the influence of the Templar Anu, and then in parentheses it says Anu, whose genetic line had been contaminated by the Templar seal through the interbreeding with members of the Anunnaki resistance, continued to spread, creating a growing chasm between races, serving the law of one and those falling under the influence of the Anunnaki resistance Templar Solar Initiates creed. In Egypt, the Templar Anu were at first met with resistance to this influence, and many of them relocated to Atlantis, where the Templar Anu had a stronger hold over the cultural environment. The Templar Anu of Atlantis began using their influence to corrupt the Atlantean priest caste, and eventually the social and moral climate in Atlantis declined under their influence. Motivated by the Anunnaki resistance, the Templar Anu began to dominate the races of Atlantean culture and made plans to conquer the lands of the inner earth. They planned to use the generator crystal to break through the electromagnetic barrier which protected the portals of the inner earth. Concerned for the welfare of the inner earth civilizations and the high concentration of Anu Melchizedeks residing there, the Anunnaki of the Syrian Council petitioned the Interdimensional Association of Free Worlds for permission to make a show of strength on Earth, offering the races protection against increasing Anunnaki resistance infiltration. Permission was granted, and the Syrian-Arcturian Coalition for Interplanetary Defense was called in to assist in this protective mission. The primary target for Anunnaki resistance manipulation was the area in which the Ark of the Covenant was located, so Egypt became the focus of Syrian Council activity. Anunnaki of the Syrian Council were first sent to the planet Mars to recreate an observational outpost that had been constructed there during the Thousand Years' War, which they hoped would intimidate the Anunnaki resistance from further interference with Earth. Undaunted by the presence of the Syrian Council, the Anunnaki resistance escalated their involvement with Atlantis and began a resurgence of their influence in Egypt, posing a greater threat to the security of the Ark of the Covenant. Around 48,500 years ago, the Syrian Council instructed their Anunnaki members to make a direct show of power in Egypt and Atlantis. Anunnaki of the Syrian Council visited these civilizations en masse, reasserting the influence of the Law of One and driving many Templar Anu out of Egypt and back to Atlantis, where they would pose less threat to the Ark of the Covenant. In Egypt and in several other locations on the globe, the portals of the inner earth were fortified as the Syrian Council Anunnaki built base of operation on Earth's surface, directly over the portal regions. The pyramid structure was a trademark of the Anunnaki architecture and scientific achievement, and several small pyramid structures were constructed above portal passages or portal passage areas throughout Egypt. The greatest of these operations bases was constructed over the main Egyptian portal opening to the inner earth, through which the Ark of the Covenant portal could be accessed. At the same time, another massive structure was constructed over the nearby portal of the Ark of the Covenant. The first monument to be created was the original Sphinx. This building covered the portal to the inner earth and linked directly to the portal passage that led to the Ark of the Covenant. Yeah, that's probably why they have it all closed off, and there's like an entrance on the head, on the top of the head, and you could see that it's been sealed off, like they don't let anyone in there. The Sphinx was designed following Anunnaki heritage, having the head of an Anunnaki warrior placed upon the body of a lion like sculpture. The lion's body of the Sphinx was a symbolic tribute to a race of beings from Harmonic Universe 2 known as the Leonines, who were instrumental in laying the early foundation of the Anunnaki culture. The Leonine beings of Harmonic Universe 2, who were large, upright, fur-covered felines of advanced intelligence, were referred as god-like by the early Anunnaki civilizations, and the Anunnaki of the Syrian Council paid tribute to this heritage. The Anunnaki of the Syrian Council drew strength and comfort from their affiliation with the Leonine people, and, by constructing this monument, intended to show the power of the Anunnakis united and built upon their Leonine ancestral allies. The symbolic design of the Sphinx was intended to show the Anunnaki resistance that they were alone in their conquest and that the true Anunnaki heritage stood behind the Anunnaki of the Syrian Council. In practical terms, the Sphinx was constructed to serve as a fortification for the inner earth portal and also as a safe house and library for the storage of sacred records and text. It also served the purpose of housing the great energy transmitting machines that were charged with UHF, fifth dimensional energy from the Ark of the Covenant. I think that means what UHF, fifth dimensional. I forget what UHF meant, but okay, we'll keep reading. So UHF, fifth dimensional energy from the Ark of the Covenant, and when the smaller ankhs, which were infused with energy in a similar fashion. Historically, the larger machines became known as Arks of the Covenant, and the true identity of the Ark of the Covenant was, or as being a portal bridge, was lost. But during the time of the original building of the Sphinx, the truth of the Ark of the Covenant was well known, and the objects were understood as tools which could draw, hold, and transmit energy that was drawn through the Ark of the Covenant from the blue flame of Amente that was stored in the Andromeda Galaxy. So, according to this, the Ark of the Covenant was it was a multi-dimensional technology that was potentially weaponized. Like if you read a lot of the stuff in the Bible, the biblical stuff about the Ark and what it was doing, like that thing was a weapon. But according to this, it may have served like multiple different purposes. I'm pretty sure it's like in the Vatican, or the military's probably got it. I'll bet the military's got it, and they're just keeping it hidden. They probably already reverse engineered it, and they're probably doing all kinds of stuff with it, but just in secret. Both the large and small tools were designed in the shape of the Ankh, which allowed high-frequency energy to be synthesized in specific ways following the natural laws of interdimensional energy mechanics. The Ankhs were used to create the Sphinx, various pyramids, and other structures as they provided the power to reverse gravitational pull and directly affect the particle makeup and morphogenetic fields of Earth matter substance. That's what I've always been saying, is they just use anti-gravity kind of technology, or like some kind of frequency technology to build those things. They served as major construction tools, weather modulators, healing tools, and as interdimensional transit devices. The original Sphinx served as a protective fortress in which these devices could be stored and kept out of the hands of the Templar Anu. The second major construction of the Syrian Council, Anunnaki, was a massive pyramid centered directly over the portal opening to the Ark of the Covenant. This pyramid was originally constructed during the time period as the Sphinx, about 48,459 years ago, which is 46,059 BC. The reconstruction of this pyramid, which occurred about 12,550,000 years ago, and that's 10,500 BC. Then again, about 11,000 years ago, 9,000 BC is what has come to be known in modern times as the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Cheops Pyramid. This structure was reconstructed and repaired on numerous occasions. It was designed and erected by the Anunnaki of the Syrian Council, the Anu Melchizedek's Hebrew and Syriac Egyptian people from that time period. The pyramid was not constructed to serve as a burial tomb, though much later it was used as such. The primary purpose of the Great Pyramid of Giza was to fortify the portal of the Ark of the Covenant and to serve as an interdimensional teleportation center. Well, that's pretty crazy. Pretty sure the military-industrial complex has already reverse engineered this, and They already probably went in there and gutted all that stuff out. Some powerful military had to have gone in there, gutted that thing for all its technology, and just kept it hidden, and they've weaponized it. The original pyramid was designed as a harmonic resonance chamber through which multidimensional frequency bands could be pulled in from deep space and from the planetary core of Sirius B, using a great Ankh positioned directly below a crystalline capstone. Through the power of the Ankh, a tremendous amount of UHF energy was pulled into focus within the capstone of the pyramid, then projected downward through the structure into second-dimensional frequency bands. The pyramid and Ark of the Covenant were situated upon Earth's geographical center point with the energy vortex that represented the heart chakra within Earth's planetary bioenergetic system. Hang on, before we continue reading, I'm just going to go on my other device really quick, and I just want to look up to make sure what we're understanding. This is UHF energy. Hang on a second. I'm just asking. Oh, okay. Ultra high frequency is what that means. So UHF, ultra high frequency energy, refers to the electromagnetic waves in a frequency range of 300 millihertz or 300 megahertz to 3 gigahertz. This range of radio frequency is commonly used for various applications, including television broadcasting, two-way radios, mobile communications, radar systems, and RFID technology for tracking and security. Okay. It also says UHF waves have shorter wavelengths than lower frequency bands, which allows for better signal penetration through obstacles, but also results in shorter transmission ranges compared to lower frequency signals. This vortex allowed energy exchange to take place between Earth and the fourth dimensional frequency bands. By creating a harmonic resonance chamber within such an interdimensional vortex, the Dimension 2 overtones of Harmonic Universe 1 could be combined with the bass tones of Dimension 4 Harmonic Universe 2, forming an interdimensional resonant tone through which visiting craft traveling from Sirius B and other star systems could enter and leap through time, making a transit to Earth almost instantaneous. Yeah, I'll bet you $1 million. Military, they snatched that up long time ago. They never let anyone have this kind of stuff. They would spend billions. They'd blow shit up and blame it on some terrorists in the Middle East so they could go and get their hands on that technology. It's almost like invaluable to them. The Great Pyramid was created to allow immediate intervention of the Syrian Council and Galactic Federation fleets should the Ark of the Covenant come under Anunnaki resistance attack. While the pyramid was in operation as an interstellar teleport station, it served as the greater deterrent to an Anunnaki resistance invasion. The Great Pyramid was used as an activation interstellar teleport station from the time of its construction, 48,459 years ago, to about 30,000 years ago, when an explosion in Atlantis caused Earth to tilt slightly on its axis, knocking the pyramid's Dimension 4 vortex, which is Earth's heart chakra, out of its previous alignment with the vortex systems of Sirius B and several other planetary systems to which it had been originally aligned. Extraterrestrial visitation was commonplace in Egypt prior to this misalignment of the Earth's grid, but following this event, transit from other star systems required more time and resources, so visitations became much less frequent. Throughout the height of its operation, 46,459 BC to 28,000 BC, the Great Pyramid of Giza was also used as an ascension chamber for the select few who possessed the required DNA assembly and favor of the Elohim. Such individuals were allowed passage through the Ark of the Covenant if the Elohim approved and opened the passageway, and some were able to ascend to Terra. The pyramid was used as a training school for initiates to the Melchizedek Elohim Ascension program, and also for healing, accelerating genetic assembly, and for passage into the inner earth portals beneath the Sphinx. Okay, so this is telling me that there's all this technology that can, teleport us, and stargates and portal technology that can take us to other worlds, other planets, other galaxies, all this crap. But none of us get access to it because it's all either been destroyed or hidden or compartmentalized, and we're just stuck on this shithole. The pyramid was always kept under tight security by the resident Anunnaki of the Syrian Council, and the Templar Anu were banned from entering the premises. This created such hostility between the Templar Anu and the Egyptian cultures operating under the protection of the Syrian Council the Syrian Council Anunnaki. The Anunnaki of the Syrian Council developed a strong hold in Egypt for a time, creating a system of pyramids and other structures that housed a network of power points through which energy was drawn from the Great Crystal of Atlantis through the Earth's grid lines and into desired locations. Okay, so yeah, that's why they're built on grid lines. So the grid lines are all tapping into this earth energy, this crystal earth energy that was all connected to and synchronized to Atlantis. I mean, maybe it was more powerful back then because this whole crystal grid system was all hooked up and connected and functional and operating and optimized, but apparently now maybe it's not so much as powerful as it used to be or something. I mean, that's what I'm getting out of this. About 35,000 years ago, the pure Melchizedek cloister race began their first full birthing wave into human civilization, reinforcing the teachings of the Law of One and bringing their fifth DNA strand potentials into the human genetic pool. Guardianship of the Ark of the Covenant was slowly turned over from the Syrian Council Anunnaki to the Anu Melchizedeks, cloister Melchizedeks Hebrew, which are the hybrids of the fifth race cloister Hebrew and the sixth race cloister Melchizedeks created through the host matrix transplants of the second seeding, and the Sirius Egyptians, all of whom became members of the early Egyptian priestcraft. Since the times of their creation, the sphere of Amente, 550 million years ago, and the Ark of the Covenant, 840,000 years ago, were the primary foci of human evolution, as the purpose and process of the human evolution imprint was held within the secrets of Amente. Okay, Guardian Alliance and Galactic Federation intervention. The Templar Anu grew progressively more hostile within the territories under Syrian Council protection, and many relocated to Atlantis, which was becoming the Templar Anu stronghold. Angered that they were not permitted to enter the inner earth or use the Ark of the Covenant, the Templar Anu devised a plan to conquer the inner earth territories by using the Atlantean crystal generators to tear down the electromagnetic barriers that secured the inner earth portals. The Templar Anu began their conquest from the continent of Atlantis, but quickly discovered the inner earth portal shields could not be easily destroyed. As they forced excessive power through one of their main generator crystals, the crystal unit exploded with more than 10 times the force of an atomic bomb. Several other smaller generators also exploded, ripping apart the continent of Atlantis and sending the majority of its land mass under the sea. Following the explosions of 30,000 years ago, which was 28,000 BC, the Atlantean landmass was reduced to 3 islands, and most of its population were destroyed. Just prior to the explosion, the Syrian Council removed various groups from Atlantis, distributing them throughout various locations on the globe. Many being taken to Egypt for resettling. The Egyptians were forewarned of the coming event, and most of the culture retreated underground into inner earth communities, finding shelter from the earth changes that would result from the explosions. During the explosions in Atlantis, the earth was tilted slightly on its axis, throwing the Earth's grid out of balance, breaking the energetic link between the Pyramid of Giza and Sirius B. The Great Pyramid could no longer function as an interstellar teleport station. The Ark of the Covenant remained stable, but surface conditions were thrown into chaos once more. The pole tilt created massive flooding in many places throughout the globe and rearrangement of some land masses. Once surface conditions stabilized, the races returned to the surface to rebuild while the Anunnaki resistance collected the Templar Anu they had rescued and placed them back upon the islands of Atlantis, helping them to reconstruct their civilization. Anunnaki of the Syrian Council remained in Egypt, then extended their influence into Atlantean island territory, returning the Atlantean and Anu Melchizedek survivors they had exiled in the inner earth to Atlantean islands, while slowly swaying a good percentage of the Atlantean Templar Anu to give up their Anunnaki resistance affiliation. Though the Law of One was beginning a resurgence in the Atlantean island cultures between 30,000 through 12,500 years ago, the Anunnaki of the Syrian Council and the Ark of the Covenant, which they continued to protect, remained more vulnerable to Anunnaki resistance infiltration because the Galactic Federation and Syrian Council fleets could no longer instantaneously come to Earth's defense due to the disruption of the Giza Pyramid teleport station. Around 12,500 years ago, the Anunnaki resistance, angered by the loss of their stronghold in Atlantis, launched an aggressive airstrike against the Syrian Council Anunnaki outpost on Mars and then in Egypt in an attempt to destroy the Ark of the Covenant and claim dominion over the Earth civilization. The Martian outpost was destroyed. The Syrian Council and various interstellar allies squelched the takeover attempt and drove the Anunnaki resistance fleet out of Earth's vicinity to the distant planet of Nibiru, but they did not arrive in time to prevent the destruction of the Great Pyramid, the Sphinx, and various other cultural centers in Egypt. The portal bridge of the Ark of the Covenant survived the attack, as did the Inner Earth territories, but following this brief onslaught of 10,500 BC, the pyramid, Sphinx, and other Egyptian structures had to be rebuilt. The Atlantean islands were not directly involved in these attacks, though resistance-loyal Templar Anu created minor uprisings against the Syrian Council loyalist relatives until word of the resistance defeat drove them into temporary underground seclusion. The Atlantean islands continued on with mounting tensions between the two groups, and by 9,500 BC, the resistance-loyal Templar Anu had once again regained their stronghold in Atlantis. In Egypt, following the resistance attack, Assyrian Council Anunnaki, Anu Melchizedeks, Cloister Melchizedeks, and Sirius Egyptians rebuilt the primary structures of their civilization. The Ankhs, which had been hidden in the inner earth during the raid, were again brought to the surface, and the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Sphinx, and several other structures were rebuilt. The Sphinx and the Great Pyramid were placed in their previous locations, marking the fortification of the Ark of the Covenant and Inner Earth portals. The Great Pyramid was slightly realigned in order to create a harmonic resonance link with the Pleiadian star system through the planet Alcyone, which would allow the structure to be used once again as an interstellar teleport station. Because of the disturbances of the Earth grid that occurred during the Atlantean explosions 30,000 years ago, the original alignment with the Sirius B system could not be reestablished. The Third Eye of Horus portal bridge to Sirius B did remain operational for smaller-scale visitations. The Earth was now more closely in alignment with the interstellar energy spirals that ran through the Pleiadian system, and so the new pyramid was oriented to an energetic alignment with Alcyone. And the next part reads, 2017 AD appointment. Earth enters a new 26,556 year time cycle, ascension cycles, and the 2017 AD appointment. Okay, let's continue reading. The civilizations of Earth continued to prosper and once again enjoyed interstellar visitation from their Syrian and Pleiadian allies. Atlantis continued to digress under the influence of the resurgence of the Templar Anu. The crystal generators were adapted into devices of torture for those not in compliance with the Templars, and a period of genetic experimentation and rampant power abuses ensued within Atlantean culture. The Ark of the Covenant and the inner Earth remained safe under the protection of the Syrian Council as Earth began her next natural 26,556-year cycle of evolution through the interdimensional time spirals. Earth entered her 26,556-year cycle 24,324 years ago in 22,326 BC with the challenge of rebalancing her energetic grid following the Atlantean explosions of 28,000 BC. With the close of the old cycle came a natural period of dimensional blending through which the sphere of Amente could have been re-entered into Earth's core, but due to the continuing setbacks and necessity for planetary rebalancing, the Earth grid did not vibrate high enough for the sphere of Amente to be returned. At the onset of the new cycle in 22,326 BC, the halls of Amente would have to remain closed to the masses as human evolution continued slowly along its course. The first 4,426 years within a new cycle represented a time of great promise, for this cycle period constituted the natural point at which Earth would release two morphogenetic waves through which masses of people could ascend to Terra if the halls of Amente were opened. The first morphogenetic wave was released from Earth in 20,113 BC. The second wave in 17,900 BC, but the populations were unable to ascend as the halls of Mente were not yet opened. Within the 26,556-year natural time cycle of Earth, morphogenetic waves are released only during 4 periods, the first 2 waves within the first 4,426 years of the cycle, and the last 2 waves during the final 4,426 years of the cycle. These two 4,426-year periods, which occur at the opening and closing of the 26,566-year cycle, are referred to as ascension cycles. Since the halls of Amente were not opened during the first ascension cycle of the new time cycle, the soul trapped in the Dimension 2 elemental and Dimension 4 astral kingdoms, as well as the humans on Earth, would have to wait until the final ascension cycle of their 26,556-year time cycle in order to ascend. From 22,326 BC forward, the guardian races of Harmonic Universe 2, the Raw Confederacy, and the earthly guardians of the Ark of the Covenant planned, prepared, and waited for the next ascension cycle. This time the halls of Amente must be opened. This time the Earth grid must be able to hold the sphere of Amente. This time the many souls trapped within Harmonic Universe 1 must be allowed to ascend. The final ascension cycle within this 26,556-year time cycle would begin in the year 196 BC. The first morphogenetic wave of this ascension cycle was due to be released in the year 2017 AD. The last morphogenetic wave of this ascension cycle would take place in 4230 AD. So remember, this book was written in 2003. So how can someone prove or disprove that in 2017 this thing was opened? Was there some kind of proof, some kind of event that happened? Or, if anyone out there has read this or would like to leave a comment, I'd like to hear your opinion. Because, sometimes people write books, and then they make these predictions like 10 to 20 years later. And regardless of whether or not the predictions come true 10 to 20 years later, it's like they already made a boatload of money selling the book. So it's like, I question, is this legit? Are these, how real are these things? I do believe there's definitely got to be some truth to this. Especially because it talks about a lot of this in the teachings of Thoth, a.k.a. Hermes Trismegistus, with the 26,000-year cycles. There's, this, and also with the Mayan calendars and things, they all line up to these cycles. But what I'd like to find a little more evidence of is these crystals, these portals, and the Ark of the Covenant, the halls of Amente technology that supposedly gets activated during these times. And if it's something that we actually could, there's some kind of physical change or evidence that we can see and document, or is this just something that happens and it's we're on this new timeline? That's what I'd like to get some more info on. If the halls of Mente were not opened during this final ascension cycle, the souls of the masses would be unable to ascend to Terra for another 26,556 years. Okay, well, how do we know? Again, everything still seems to be. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like since 2017, like a lot of people have been waking up massively, and it's like the network effect. It's happening so fast. I don't think it can be stopped. If the halls of Mente could be opened by 2012 AD or by 4230 AD at least, or at the latest, the races of Earth could finally reclaim the divinity and dignity of their heritage and return to Harmonic Universe 2, to the reality of the immortal body and the original 12-strand DNA construction. Their consciousness would no longer be trapped within Harmonic Universe 1 or in the Dimension 4 astral planes. The living and the dead, those souls trapped in the astral planes, would rise up and ascend out of their earthly prisons and into the heavenly lands of Terra in Harmonic Universe 2. Well, that sounds like some rapture Christian propaganda. The living and the dead, those souls trapped in the astral planes, would rise up and descend out of their earthly prisons into the heavenly lands. These stories of ascension, which appear within your traditional religious texts, were originally given to you by the Elohim and others in order to explain the highly scientific process of dimensional ascension that your races would be faced with when the halls of Amente were opened. Okay, this next part says, the teachings of the divine science, the original Templar Anunnaki resistance, and Templar Anu distortions of the Templar teachings and the Guardians' awakening agenda. 28,000 BC through present. Originally, the teachings of ascension were quite scientific in nature, dealing with the reality of multidimensional physics. The original information brought to the races of the third seeding represented the teachings of the science of Quilanta, the underlying energetic mechanisms through which reality is created in the process through which consciousness evolves. The early Atlantean cultures had full access to this information until the Templar Anu distorted the teachings in order to control the populations. The science of ascension and multidimensional mechanics was publicly taught as a primary belief model around which societies were structured. The teachings were given to all of the races throughout the globe, not just those of Egypt and Atlantis. Over time, and through the oppression of the Templar Anu and later control-oriented political groups, the true teachings were distorted and destroyed as they gave the common person power over their personal destiny. People who are empowered cannot be controlled or manipulated by outside authorities. Well, yeah, I totally agree with that statement. And so the tool of empowerment, knowledge, was taken away from the masses so the few elite could hold them under their power. And that's where we are today for the most part. Most people are ignorant NPC robots and are easily taken advantage of and blindly obey orders from their tyrannical governments, or they blindly accept the information without questioning its validity. What remains today of the Ascension teachings is hardly an introduction to the true science as it was once applied on Earth. Portions of the teachings survived through the mystery or the mystical schools of the ages, kept under strict secrecy as the politically controlling factions of various time periods persecuted those attempting to bring the truth to the populations. Even today, this persecution exists, though usually in more covert form, much of it within the traditional religious organizations whose teachings have been highly distorted in order to keep people powerless and subservient to religious authority figures. The science of ascension was withheld from the masses, but promises of ascension was used to manipulate people into supporting and obeying authorities who claimed that ascension could be accomplished only through blind belief and adherence to their politically motivated creeds. The original teachings were intended for everyone, not just to serve the objectives of a power elite. Though certain groups were appointed with guardianship of the sphere of Amente and the Ark of the Covenant, they were not intended to hoard this power and knowledge for themselves, but this is precisely what occurred throughout various periods of Earth history. The guardian races of 22,326 BC knew it would be a challenge to prepare the masses for the ascension cycle of 196 BC, 4230 AD, but they had not originally planned for the disruptions caused by the Templar Anu and their Anunnaki resistance alliance or allies. Through the manipulation of the Anunnaki resistance and the Templar Anu following the Atlantean explosions of 28,000 BC, preparing the races for the morphogenetic wave of 2017 AD became a very difficult task, as the teachings that would allow this preparation to go smoothly were lost, manipulated, distorted, or destroyed, and as time went on, the majority of humans did not have access to this information. Throughout the development of human culture since 28,000 BC, the covert influence of the Anunnaki resistance and of the Templar Anu proceeded to contaminate human consciousness with the elitist controlling creed initially developed by the Templar Solar Initiates of Terra. The only Templar of Terra was a sacred organization devoted to upholding the law of one, or the original Templar of Terra. The Terran Tauranusium races were gifted by the Syrian Council with the power and knowledge of the Templar in order to serve as guardians of the Terran planetary grid. They had the awesome responsibility of ensuring that Terra's energetic systems remained balanced and that Terra and the Tauranusium races stayed upon their course of evolution into Harmonic Universe 3 planetary grid of Gaia. Due to the corruption of the Terran Templar Solar Initiates orchestrated by the Anunnaki factions of the Harmonic Universe 2 Sirius star system, who were rebelling against the Syrian Council, the truth of the sacred science of Templars was, for a time, lost on Terra. And because of this distortion and intentional Anunnaki resistance manipulation on Earth, the Templar teachings provided to the Earth races became tainted with lies and distortions, progressively leading human culture into an elitist, materialistic, dualistic perception of reality. That perception has formed the underlying belief based upon which culture was organized and is still apparent within most of the cultures of present-day Earth. The original Templar Creed taught unity, consciousness, and love, cooperation, and respect towards all other life forms. It did not appoint some groups as being godly or others as evil. It taught of the necessity for equality between peoples and genders and the need to heal and integrate all aspects of society. The original Templar teachings promoted kindness, gentleness, tolerance, and power through comprehension of sacred energy mechanics and conscious embodiment of the God force. They did not teach that God was a male authority figure who passed judgment upon sinful, inferior humans. They did not teach that the male gender was formed in the image of God and the female was a lesser part extracted through the godly male to hold a position of subservience to men. The original Templar Creed did not endorse the exploitation of the planet, animal, and mineral kingdom for the purpose of personal subsistence and materialistic gain. It taught respect and reverence for all life. The original Templar did not teach of good and evil. It taught that evil deeds were the result of ignorance to the true structure of the universe, and that evil was cured by education through the law of one. It taught that peoples were created to be free, and in that freedom should be taught how to become co-creators with the God force. It taught that every being in the universe was an individual face and expression of God, and that brotherhood was simply the rational result of this comprehension. Literally, all of the elitist, sexist, materialistic distortions of the true laws of the Templar were perpetuated through the influence of the Anunnaki resistance, some of their extraterrestrial co-conspirators, and the Templar Anu resistance loyalist lineage who became their earthly operatives. The distorted Templar creeds motivated everything from the holy wars throughout history to the structures upon which economic, political, and social organization has built. The creed of the Templar Anu spread far and wide and has colored the mores of literally every human, or of every human culture on Earth since the time of the third seeding. The Templar distortions have evolved into a massive program which has repressed the majority for the benefit of a few and has caused humanity to lose comprehension of its divine source and the true potentials of its evolutionary heritage. This creed has been a poison to human society, and the pain, disease, war, competition, hatred, and violence that have colored our human condition throughout history and into the present are clear illustrations of just how powerful these distortions of truth have affected you. It would help all of you to realize that these creeds were given to you and promoted by extraterrestrial forces who set themselves up as surrogate gods, so human evolution would remain under their control for the purpose of exploitation. True spirituality lives within, and it is through that inner truth that you will be able to separate the chaff from the grain in regard to your spiritual and physical evolution. In contemporary society, there are groups of souls now being born who have commissioned, or who have been commissioned by the Palladorians, Elohim, Ra Confederacy, and Interdimensional Association of Free Worlds to bring the original teachings of the Templar back to your civilizations. They will bring back to the earth the truth of the law of one and the knowledge of sacred science through which the law can be actively applied. Many traditional persuasions will attempt to promote the new teaching as evil or to otherwise discredit them, precisely because restoration of the truth of multidimensional reality, which these organizations have for long attempted to hide, will be the downfall of these institutions. Once humanity becomes aware of the law of one and the unity consciousness created through its practice, control organizations will no longer be able to blindly lead the people, for the people will choose freedom and knowledge over ideological imprisonment. And they will choose love, equality, and a personal relationship with the creative force over judgment, devaluation, hatred, fear, subservience, and blind worship of self-promoting outside authority figures. This evolution of self-concept and redefinition of reality will take time, but through this process, humanity will progressively grow to become free, and through its freedom will come to understand its co-creative relationship with the divine. When the guardian races of 22,326 BC planned the preparation of the races for their 2017 AD awakening, they had not realized the extent to which these manipulations would distort the evolution of human culture, nor the degree to which the races would digress under this influence. Despite the often disheartening setbacks, the guardian races of the higher harmonic universes remained loyal to their cause of seeing the covenant of Pallador and the evolution of the races reach fulfillment. They have assisted, and still do along every step of the way, helping humanity to awaken to its relationship with the divine creative source. After defeating the Anunnaki resistance attack of 10,500 BC and assisting the races of Egypt to rebuild their structures, the Syrian Council and guardian allies of humanity continued to visit and assist evolving cultures, serving as a counterbalance to the Anunnaki resistance and Templar Anu forces that continued to assert their influence on Earth. The new teleport station of the rebuilt Pyramid of Giza, now aligned with the energetic systems of the Alcyone and the Pleiades, offered swift guardian intervention and protection of Earth and easy access to Earth visitation. Until about 11,500 years ago, humanity enjoyed the benefits of open relationships with the extraterrestrial cultures, the advanced extraterrestrial cultures. This open relationship ended in 9,500 BC through an event created at the hands of the Atlantean Templar Anu. Following this event, human culture would enter a long period of digression as the planet was placed under intergalactic quarantine and the previous powers of advanced civilizations were lost. This event of 9,500 BC was the first of several major setbacks the Guardians encountered as they attempted to prepare the races for the opening of the Halls of Amenti and the mass ascension cycle of 196 BC through 4,230 AD. Preparing these races would be no easy task while the Templar Anu and their resistance allies exerted forceful influence over the developing human cultures. Many struggles and hardships would be encountered as the power struggle between the harmonic universe two races who upheld the law of one and those who placed self-promotion above universal balance was played out through the evolution of humanity on Earth. Through the evolution of freedom, co-creative endeavor, and unity consciousness, that power struggle will one day come to an end and peace will be restored to the races of the third seeding. Okay, it looks like that was the end of Chapter 3 there. Next is Chapter 4, A Journey Toward Awakening. So we'll stop this recording and continue in the next one.